In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make custom NPCs that will follow and attack the closest player. Also, all of the code that's used in this video can be found in my Discord, which you'll find as the first link in the description below. So the very first thing we're going to do is actually get our NPC mesh. So to do this, I would recommend you find something that already has some basic animations. So I went and found on PolyPizza this model of a giant that has a lot of animations with it. So just download this as an FBX. Once you've downloaded your model with the animations, just go ahead and make a new folder in your UEFN project. I'm going to call this NPC stuff. And here I'm going to import in my mesh. Make sure that this import animation box is checked. And then hit import all. And now we have our material, and you can see for some reason our prop is not textured properly. The reason is because in our material we need to go in here. You can search for skeletal mesh and mark this use with skeletal mesh and then hit apply and save. Now we have a textured giant. What we now need to do is actually make our custom NPC definition. So I'm going to right click, go to artificial intelligence and make a new definition. Here I'm going to call this giant def and open it up. As our type, we're going to say custom. For our behavior, we'll say verse behavior, but we'll leave this blank for now. And as our modifier, in our cosmetic modifier, we'll change the cosmetic to custom character. And now we need a blueprint. So to make this, we're going to hit add to create a new blueprint. We're going to make it in our NPC stuff folder, and we're going to call this giant BP. And hit save. It'll automatically open, and here I'm going to add a skeletal mesh. In our skeletal mesh, we need to select our actual skeletal mesh asset, which will be our giant, and hit save. Here you need to make sure that our giant is actually facing the X direction, so we'll see our X is here. Let's go ahead and rotate it. Also, he looks pretty huge, so I'm going to scale him down a little bit. Maybe something like 0.6, and then hit compile and save. And then I can close out of this BP for now. And you'll see it automatically selected our blueprint here, so we won't have to do that. Character movement, make sure this is animation preset. And then we actually need to make a preset. So what we're gonna do is hit right click and go to blueprint class. In this, we'll select animation preset and then click this animation preset basic locomotion and hit select. Then we're going to name this giant preset. Doesn't matter the name, but after I open this up, you'll see we have some options for all of these basic animations and movements. So our idle, I'm going to select our idle animation. For our forward, I'll just search our walk animation. Backward, we don't really have a backward animation, so I'll just search walk, and for all of these, I'm going to select walk. But because all of these are walk, I'm actually going to change the move forward to, let's see if we have a, we have a run animation. So I'll change it to that and hit compile. Now that we have this preset, we can go back to our definition and select it here. Now that this is done, we have this basic modifier done. And, you know, if you want to add more modifiers, you can add that here. So you can see, you can change the movement modifier, which is just like the speeds. And there's quite a few other options that you can mess around with, like UI and effects. But for this basic tutorial, I'm just going to leave it as these two and hit save. Now that we actually have our definition, we need to add an NPC spawner and drag it into the play space. Here I'm going to change the NPC character definition to our giant definition. That's it for now, but obviously you'll want to change the spawn settings based off of your preferences and what you need. So now let's go ahead and load the game and see what our NPC looks like. So you see whenever we try to load session, we'll get an error here. That's because in our NPC definition, we don't have a verse behavior here. So I'm actually going to change this to empty behavior just so I can really quick test out and make sure the NPC's body is working correctly before we add behavior. So now in game, you can see that we have our NPC, which is a big old giant. But, there's a few problems. We can walk through him, his collisions aren't set up, and the main problem is that he doesn't actually do anything. So let's actually add some new behavior. To do this, we're going to go to your Verse Explorer. So right click on your folder name and click Add New Verse File to Project. Then select NPC Behavior Basic and then rename this. We're going to say Giant Behavior and click Create. In this behavior, we're going to just have the NPC run at the player and attack them at all times, and always attack the closest player. Now in this, we first need to go ahead and delete this and make an if statement. Here we'll say that our NPC agent is equal to get agent. This will get the NPC's agent whenever they spawn. And then from this, we're going to get the character. So let's say NPC char is equal to NPC agent get Fort character. And with this, we need to add using characters to the top. You can also just get rid of this stuff because it's in the way. And we're also going to need so this is going to be NPC nav, which we'll get by saying our NPC char dot get navigatable. And I realize I'm just going to change this. I had this as a capital H. And then we are also going to get our focus. So we'll say NPC char dot get focus interface. And then last, we need our NPC animation controller, which is going to be NPC char dot get play animation controller. And I need to use our play animation directory. And then that's done. So we can now say then. What this does is pretty much get all the different things that we need. So our agent is just the agent from the NPC. The character is the Fort character. And then we have our navigatable. This will allow us to actually move the NPC or tell it to move to different locations, to go to different people, or to navigate to different places. The focus is to control where the NPC is looking. And then the NPC animation is used to be able to play different animations for our NPC. So now that we have all this information on the NPC, we can now actually make our behavior. So we'll say that first, let's get our NPC's spawn point by getting the NPC character dot get transform. And then we want the location, so we'll say dot translation. Now we want to make a loop that's going to constantly first get the closest player and then navigate the giant to that player. So first we'll just add a sleep. And then we're going to say, and then we need to get our target. So we'll say for every single player in get play space dot get players, but you'll see this is an error. This doesn't work. The reason for this is because you can actually not use get play space in the giant behavior. See if we just try this, you'll see unknown identifier. So our solution for this is so the best solution I found for this is to actually make a new device. So we're going to go back to our content and we're going to right click and add a new verse file. This is going to be a normal verse device and we're going to call this something like, let's say, behavior helper, and hit create. So now back in our verse code, we're going to go to our behavior helper and we need to make a function in here that is going to get the nearest target from a position that we send it. So let's go ahead and remove the onBegin because we don't need that. And let's make a function, and we're going to call it find nearest target. And in this, we're going to take a for character and of type for character, and it's going to be a return of type for character because we wanted to return the for character or the player who is closest. The first thing we need to do is actually establish something that will return because we always have to return something. So we'll say var maybe target, which is going to be a type maybe for character, and we'll say that's equal to false. And then we're going to return our maybe target. I spelled return wrong. And we need a question mark at the end here. And you'll see we get this error. That's because we need a decides right here. Because it's possible that this doesn't return anything at all. So now we need to create a maximum range. So I'm going to say our check range, which we'll say of type float, is equal to, let's just say like 5,000. So that it'll only check for players within 5,000 meters of the for character that we send it. So now we need to go through all of the players. So we'll say for every single player in get play space dot get players, and then we get the for character for this player. So we'll say FC, but we can't use FC because we use it here. So we'll say player FC is equal to player.get for character. So this will go through every single player in the game. And then we need to check if the distance from our player that we sent this function and the current player that we're looking at is less than our check range or not. So we'll say if, then our distance difference is equal to the distance between our target, which is going to be our player FC, and then we'll get the transform and then the translation, and then we need to get the character that we sent. So fc dot get transform dot translation, and here you'll see we get an error because we need to use spatial math. And now we have another error because this is failing, or no, because this is 100% going to succeed. So now we need to actually say if the distance between the player that we're currently looking at and the character that we sent, which will be our NPC, is less than our check range, or then we're going to set our target that we'll return equal to our current target, or the current player, which will be player FC. But this is an issue because this is a type optional for character and this is a non-optional for character. So to fix that, we'll put option right here. And then we're going to set the check range equal to our distance difference. So what this will do, so for example, it'll go to the very first player, check the range, and if it's less than 5,000, let's say the distance between the player and the NPC is 1,000, then it'll set this check range to 1,000. And then it'll go to the next player, and let's say this player, the range is 1,500. Then it'll check this, and it'll fail, so it will not set the new amount. Then let's say the third player that it checks has a range of 500. Then it'll go ahead and check, and this will succeed, and it'll change the new check range to 500. This way, it'll go through every single player and find the player that is closest. Except there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is in our if statement, we need to say not player FC is equal to our FC. This will ensure that it doesn't actually get the NPC as its returning value. So now we have this function that'll get the closest player in our behavior helper class. So we can go back to our NPC behavior. And here I'm going to reference this file. And I'm just going to say behavior help of type behavior helper is equal to behavior helper. Now that we can actually use this function, back in our loop, our new target is equal to our behavior help dot, and then we'll go and we'll find this function. So dot find nearest target, and we're going to send it our NPC's character, which will be NPC char. And then in this, I'm also going to get the agent of our new target. So I'll say our new agent is equal to our new target dot get agent. But you see we get another error here. That's because we actually need to go back to our helper and we need to add the transacts. And now it will all be fixed. So now that we have the closest player, we need to make our NPC move to that player. So the first thing we want the NPC to do is actually look at the player. So what we'll do is say NPC focus dot maintain focus. Then we send it an agent, so we'll send our agent which is closest to the player. But because this is a synchronous function, which means if we do this, it's going to wait to look at the player before it starts moving. We need to say spawn and then put this within a spawn. What this will do is it'll make the NPC look at the player and instantly move on to the next code, meaning it won't wait for the NPC to look at the player before moving on. So now that the NPC is actually looking towards the player, we now need to make our NPC navigatable move towards the player. But we can't just do that. We need to first make the player into a navigation target. So to do this, we'll say our nav target is equal to make navigation target. And for the agent, we'll say new agent. This will make our target player a navigation target. So now we'll say an NPC nav dot navigate to our nav target. This will technically work, but if we go to our navigate to function here, our navigate to also takes a movement type and a reach radius and allow partial path. So let's go ahead and set those. If we go back, we will say that our movement type is going to be equal to movement types dot running, and then we'll say our reach radius is equal to, I'll just say something like 150. This means that whenever the NPC is trying to navigate towards the player or go towards the player, whenever it's 150 centimeters away, it will stop. And its navigation will now be done. Now that the NPC has went to the player, we need to make the NPC attack. So to make the NPC attack, the first thing we're going to do is have it play an animation. So we'll say our NPC anim for our animation controller dot play. But now we need it to play an animation, and we don't have any animations yet. So let's minimize our verse, go into our content browser, and find the attack that we want. So here, let's look through our animations until we find a attack animation. Here we go. And I'm going to copy the name of this and then go back to our verse. And in this, I'm going to make a var, say it is attack 1, and then of type, animation sequence, which is equal to our giant name. But here we need to use assets, and then it's going to give us another error because it's in a folder. So we'll say NPC stuff and put that in front. It was probably easier to just rename this rather than this very long name, but it'll work the same. So now I'm going to say NPC animation.play attack 1. So now, whenever our NPC goes to the player, it'll play the attack animation, but it won't actually do any damage. So what we'll do is first go into our attack animation. So we'll see the exact time that the monster would actually be hitting the player. So it looks like maybe around 0.46 maybe. So if we go back to our reverse code and say sleep 0.46, and then after that amount of time, we are going to copy this. We're going to say if let's get the distance between the player and the NPC. So the easiest way to do this is actually just to copy this right here and add it here. And then we'll say if this is less than 100, here we need to use spatial math as well. And then we need to change the names. So the distance between our NPC character and our new target. If the distance between our NPC and our target is less than 100, or actually because the NPC is automatically going to be 150 away, we'll say is less than 200 centimeters. So if the player didn't dodge at least 50 meters, then we will get our target and say dot damage, and then whatever you want your NPC damage to be. So I'm just going to say 15. And that's it. So now we, whenever our NPC spawns, we get all the NPC information. We then start a loop where it will find our nearest target. Then it will look at the target and start moving towards the target. Then whenever it's gotten to the target, it will play attack animation, wait until the attack is about hitting the player, check the distance between the player and the NPC, and if it's under a certain amount, it'll damage the player. But before we test this out in game, I do want to add one more thing. And at the start of our loop, we'll say if our NPC character is active. So what this will do is check if, no, instead of is a, we'll do that, yep. So this will check if the character or our NPC is alive or not, and to make it so that this will only activate if the character is not alive, we'll say not. So if the character is not alive, we're just going to break the loop. This way, we won't have, whenever you kill multiple NPCs, you won't have like 500 loops that are all running at a time trying to check or do something whenever there isn't a character to actually do it for. So to actually add this behavior, I can fully exit out of the verse code here and hit build verse code. And if we go back to our NPC definition and change our behavior to verse behavior, and then in this option, change the behavior script to our giant behavior. Now, if you hit save and close out of this, I'm now going to push changes and test this out in game. So now that I'm in game, you'll see that he is running towards me at all times. And when he gets close, he will damage me. But if he attacks and I dodge, it's okay. Now let's go ahead and test out that he's shootable. So if I end the game and add a way to give me a gun. So I'm just going to add an item granter real fast. And we wait for our NPC to spawn. You'll see he doesn't really have collision anyway. He's not getting shot. My bullets are just going through. So let us fix that. To do this, we'll go to our NPC stuff and open up our skeletal mesh. Here at the bottom, you'll see that it has no physics. We don't have a physics asset for it. So to do that, I'm going to hit right click, go physics, and create a physics asset. And here I'm going to select my skeletal mesh. I'm going to call this giant physics and create asset. Now you can open this up, and sometimes it will kind of mess up and not do this automatically, and you'll need to select these and kind of go and fix them yourself so that they line up with it. But it seems like it did pretty good for me, so I'm just gonna undo that and hit save. And now you'll see it actually automatically selected this as the physics asset. So if I push changes and test this out again, so now with the physics asset in game, our NPC can now actually be shot everywhere and killed. You'll see it respawns, runs over, and boom. Now we actually can't run through it anymore either. And just like that, you now have a fully working NPC that will go and attack players. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more tutorials in the future. You can get this code in the Discord. That'll be the first link in the description below. Also, make sure to check out Map Academy.